Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Arena Brawl Podcast. We have a name now. My name is TitanLord. This is my friend Myriad. Say hi, Myriad.
Hello.
And today we got some great new content for you this week. We're going to talk about how we approach the metagame, how some of our matches went. How he and I had a match this week that we really want to talk about. That's going to be at the end, so you got to wait on that. But for now. First, we would like to talk about our regular daily rituals and how we approach the league and how we prep and all that kind of stuff. Would you like to take it away?
Yeah, sure. The approach to the league is going to be different for each player. Of course, it's a personal thing. The only sort of structure you have is, hey, you have three games to make or organize per week. Some people just want to get it out the way. A lot of people have to leave it to the weekend or procrastinate on it. So we see the vast majority of games at the very end. But personally, when it comes to these things, I'm a get it out the way as soon as I can guy. I have my time zone to blame for that because here in Australia, there aren't really other players around up at the times I'm around, and that means like if a time works, I have to do it. Otherwise, there's not going to be a time later, right? It's really difficult.
Yeah, I don't have that. Yeah,
problem. For me, yeah, I don't have the luxury of having any sort of ritual. It's like, can you play this time? Okay, let's do it, and then we'll play the game and try and get the three out the way. Really.
Yeah, mine is very simple. I live in the U.S. and my work schedule is just barely flexed enough to usually get to play when I want to play, which means I have time to the first thing I'll do is I'll wake up 2 hours before the match. About 30 to 40 minutes in, I'll drink coffee because I need to be caffeinated or I can't function. And then after that, I literally just 15 minutes before a game, I have a short playlist that I have of music that I just jam to. And I sit in my chair and I watch something or I play a practice or a warm-up game, and I will be rocking out, banging my head, pumping myself up. It'd be very embarrassing if somebody watched me doing it. I'm glad that's never on camera, but I get pumped to play when I want to win. And funny enough, I have lost every single match that I did not do that. I had some really bad losses this season, which I pulled through. But there were some that last week that I didn't do my ritual at all, and I lost all my games. So I thought that was pretty funny.
You didn't have your music pumping.
Nope.
Nope. I'll blame the music.
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm very lucky that my time zone allows me to goof off for a little bit before I get to play. I don't have time constraints. Also, I like to play as soon as possible too. I don't like waiting and being nervous and being anxious oh my god, all week about a match.
Oh, it's all week, right.
I just want to get
it done. Do you have
that
in the day as well? If it's late in the day and you have a long time to wait, or do you just never have that time free to play the game in the first place?
I usually play my matches pretty early in the days, so I don't think I've played before work on my off days. I don't think I've had a match after work yet, so I usually get them done so I don't have to worry about them all day.
Fair enough.
You, on the other hand, you don't have that privilege, so.
For me, I can't be nervous because it's as I'm saying, or as I said, it's literally just oh, can you do it? All right, playing, let's go. So, honestly, well, before I had a lot more time because I wasn't working as much. Now I'm full time, so I can't really do this. But usually I'd set up with OBS. Sometimes I'd bother with commentary. Discover that my sound is I've lost half the things I'm saying, and then I have to record it in post anyway. And then people seem to like the post commentary better because I could focus solely on commentating the game instead of working out what the hell I was trying to do, or I'm trying to do in any position. Um, and then yeah, I mean at this stage, like, it's actually easier on me because all I have to do is turn on OBS, record myself jamming to tunes as you like as well, and then in post I'll talk about the game, and I'll still be listening to music at the time. I'll just like be recording my commentary, and I'll still be jamming to music. You know, I'm not on Facecam then.
I can't play with music. I need to talk out loud when I play.
Oh,
I play so much worse when I'm listening to music. When I'm like playing Q, I'll listen to music because those games don't matter. But well, I have not. One, I've been trying to record, but I'm too lazy to make thumbnails, so I haven't uploaded anything. And two, it's just, I don't know, I can't focus as much when I'm listening to music. I get way too into the music that I'm listening to, so.
well, with the thumbnail thing, I can help you with that. Or it, like, once you get the thumbnail done, it's pretty easy to do, or the template rather. But yeah, no, that's a thing for another time. Yeah, so another thing we have, which is common in other competitions as well, in other formats, like I know Pokemon has this, because I have a mate who plays Pokemon, but open deck lists.
Oh, yeah.
So, unlike the ladder, right, unlike the public queue, sorry, where you'll be, you know, if someone gets you with a gimmick, okay, cool, you're like, wow, man, I got hit with a gimmick, that feels kind of bad. But in you know, open deck lists, you get to see everything going on.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a big user of the open deck list, or do you just jam straight into a game?
Bro, I look at lists every single second until I start playing. When I realized that it was all open deck list the first week, I spent like an hour before, while I was drinking my coffee getting ready to play, just reading over their deck list, being like, okay, we need to remember to watch out for this. I need to make sure that how many counter spells are they running that I need to be prepared for, how many mana rocks are they playing, like, so how much would blowing one or two up really impact the game, that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I really look into deck list for open deck list. I'm very happy that the league is open deck list.
Yeah. I suppose it's more of an advantage if you're trying to respond to threats, playing control. But no, I for me, my approach to open deck lists was week one. I sort of looked at it and I went, cool, but I found I wasn't really actually taking much from it. When every deck seems to have the staple cards to worry about, it's just imprinted in my brain, like, oh, they have one wide open, it's probably like Swords to Plowshares or something similar, or maybe Mana to Tithe. And then it's like, okay, they have one blue open, and I can play my commander. Is it like Spell Pierce if I'm running a Planeswalker, or is it going to be like Wash Away because that card's so frustrating? You know, like, it's like, I don't need an open deck list to tell me that might be what they have at this point, because it's just so everywhere. And then the sort of niche cards, I don't know, at this point in, like, I mean, I have, like, gimmicks are going to be rare in this format anyway, so I've never been punished for not checking deck lists, so I just haven't been. But it also, like, as I was saying, like, when at this stage I'm taking games as I can get them, often I don't really have time to check. I mean, I do my best if I'm really organized to, in my second monitor, I'll open up the deck list or anything, but honestly, half the time I can't be bothered. It's such a different
I'm a big
take
fan.
to it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the open deck list because we're a 100 card singleton deck, so the variance between games is already like pretty wild sometimes. So to me, having a way to be like, okay, we know what their nut draw looks like in case they have it, and I like being able to prep for that. I like being able to be like, okay, this isn't some Golos deck that's gonna on cue that's gonna throw out some weird Kiora, like I think we talked earlier, Kiora Best the Sea God or Carnage Tyrant at me. Like I know ahead of time what's coming, so I can kind of prep for it. And to me, it makes the game feel a bit more. I feel like an open deck list actually makes it more competitive because it feels a little bit less random because there's more known information. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, no, I can buy into that sentiment. You know, if you have like one answer and you're like, this card wrecks me, and then you have to play like really reserved with your answers, to make sure that you do have an answer. That's definitely nice, and that is a skill as well. I don't, yeah, I don't really play decks that have that. I'm much more. I want to do my own plan with a lot of the decks I play. A lot of aggro stuff. I mean, I played Niv, but I didn't really. Even then, I didn't really check deck lists with the Niv. So yeah, I mean, I probably should have. But as it turns out, like, I don't know. I think just at this point of playing the format, the key threats are just so ingrained in my head that like I can sort of expect it, and then I know like some of the threats. Like I played against a Chandra tribal list, and it's like, well, they play the 6-mana Chandra that can't be countered, and I'm running Niv. It's like I can't really play around that one because if I'm holding up counterspell for literally like any other threat and they play that, okay, it's one card in the 99, right? It's like how big do I want to play around that? And I've also found that before I used to, especially against control decks and stuff, I would pick like one card that I wanted to play around and then try and play around it the whole game, regardless of if it was right to do so. So even for me, it was like almost just helpful to just play stuff and force the opponent to have answers.
Yeah.
And when you do that, I think it's you're much you win a lot more often, because a lot more often your opponent doesn't have it. They might be bluffing, or they're just trying to do like some draw card spell, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on the like focusing on it too much is actually very, very bad, because you're like, oh, I know they could have Cityscape Leveler here, but Cityscape Leveler is 30 cards down in their deck, and you're sitting here like holding up Tail's End and a counterspell to, and instead of like removing some other threat that's already on board, you're not digging for cards because you're so worried about whatever threat's coming that you know about that's in their deck, but in reality it's probably 30 or 40 cards down.
Right.
I definitely agree with you on that point. I would still say I like knowing what could happen, but it is kind of difficult not to hyper focus on whatever scariest thing your opponent can do that you're always worried about, like I don't know, Hullbreaker Horror, because it can't be counted in the league. So
yeah, okay.
so that happened to me. I got too worried about that against Uro, and
oh yeah,
it made it so that the only game it actually came down and did something, I wasn't ready for it, because I wasn't. I over focused on it game 1, and then lost to it on game 3. And then I don't think it ever came. No, I did lose to it on game 3. Yeah. So I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I think. I don't remember. I don't 100% remember.
Might have happened.
I was like,
you might have had a nightmare afterwards. If I didn't play around it.
It was like almost 2 weeks ago now, so I really don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. So the other cool thing. So first of all, there's open deck list, and then second of all, if you know sort of where you're being placed in the league, you're gonna know like what opponents you're likely to face against, especially as the week comes to a close. You see all the results come in, and there's just a small window before you have to submit a deck list, and you've seen like all the relevant results come in. You can go. You have a bit more of an informed like idea of what types of decks you're going to play against, because people have pet decks, right? So if I'm next to you in the league, I know you have a pet deck, and that's the fairy, and you've played it every week, right? some players don't have pet decks. Some players do have pet decks and they only play it like from time to time. But quite a lot of success has come from people with their pet decks. They've tried and it's been tried and tested. They know it works, and they'll bring it every time, no matter what. And it's sort of like a live by the sword, die by the sword ritual. I mean, I've seen like Skull, who's the owner of the server. He runs Yorgmoth like almost every week, and that is very much like you will get rolled by any deck that does not need creatures to win.
Usually.
Caveat, you absolutely usually. Rolled.
He rolled me, so usually.
Yeah. he has outs for sure, yeah. But it's difficult, and they need to get a lot more luckier to get the best out of that. Yeah. And so, and then the old stick fingers, and I can go on about how some pet decks will struggle against certain matchups. But that is a factor. And if you have a bunch of different decks you can play, or if you have a pet deck of your own, tech choices you can make, what you can do is you can jump into some test games, practice games. It's also part of the reason why these servers are up in the first place, is so that instead of just playing against the queue, where players are either like instant conceding until they have nut hands, or they're really weak to like thin skin to like any counterspell. They see the first counterspell, and then the sleeping emoji comes out, and then they play a land, and then they concede straight afterwards. They didn't even try and resolve a second spell, and they're like, nah. They've played counterspells. I can't beat that. Not worth it. I'm moving on.
Or better yet, you're playing mono white and you mana tithe their mana rock and they just concede immediately.
Yeah. So, you can ask people, hey, do you have this deck? I think I'm playing against this deck next week. I want to see like what's good against it, and then make adjustments from there as well. I don't know if you've had any like good experiences with practice games for your Teferi, like made like one or two tech choices here or there.
At the very beginning, yes, because I had never played against anybody who was like playing like real decks that are actually good in a proper metagame that wasn't the normal queue. So I played a couple games against some people. You might have actually been one of those people, if I remember. We might have played a couple games.
Might have been.
I think you played Niv against me once, and I think I played two different Ajani lists that you had. One. That's why we were friends on Arena. We were like, why were we friends?
Testing. Yes.
Yeah. So,
well, there you go.
Those games, and I played against another guy called Olaf the Moose who was playing Kethis. Those kind of made me go like, okay, I was expecting the metagame to be very like kind of mid-rangey, value piley, like stuff that a control deck could probably beat on a good draw most of the time. So I'm like, okay, I don't need all the aggro tech because I got my list from Freylaser's season 1 list, and then I changed it to my own kind of specifications. And what playing the practice games taught me was like, I don't need all this aggro tech. I don't need Seal Away. I hate Seal Away, so I'm very glad that I got it. Yeah. I don't need all of the 3-mana enchantments that come down and exile something, because I wasn't worried about it. And week 1, I was awarded for that because I swept week 1. I didn't drop a single game in any of my matches, so that philosophy pretty much carried with me up until Adeline rolled me on week 2. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. So it's just that sort of week 1, like you come in with your quote unquote casual deck, and you're I want to see how it does, or.
No, it wasn't. It was never casual.
It was never casual.
During season 3, when I discovered the server, I had not played Teferi as a commander at all because I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Well, I've been playing blue-white control with Teferi in the deck for probably a year at that point. So it's not like the archetype was unfamiliar to me. Is that I didn't want to play only like Teferi mirrors and 5-color control decks in queue. That it just it's just not fun. It loses its fun after a while. When I joined the league, I was like, oh, cool. I can actually play Teferi and don't have 25% of my opponents concede immediately as soon as the match started. That's nice. Plus, it's the most familiar archetype that I could probably play, so obvious pick. And then that just became my pet deck. I'm like, I'd rather sit here and master this deck than try a new deck every week if I think the matchups aren't going to be good. I'd rather lose bad matchups with the deck and get better with it. So,
Yeah, that's fair. Well, as I was saying before, like some people have pet decks, some people have like pet decks that they only play occasionally, and then some people just play everything. It might look like I play everything, but I definitely have a pet deck. If my cosmetics on Arena say anything about it, I do like a Johnny.
yeah.
Is my first experience with just deck building, and I think we'll go more into collaborative deck building in a future week. But my first sort of experience, like coming into a more competitive scene to try and build a deck, was with a Johnny. Building that from when it came out, so fairly recent. Wow. It feels fairly recent, probably wasn't, but sort of half a year ago or whatever it was, Dominaria United came out.
Oh, wow.
And worked with that list with another guy who was like, hey, the ultimate's really cool. And you can get that really quick. Like, it's like you can get it 2 turns if you have a card that says proliferate. And if you have a card on turn 2 or turn 1 that says get a mana, you can get the ultimate on turn 4. And it's like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And so spent the whole sort of a long period sort of trying to get that deck to work. And once I got that deck to work, it was so fun to play because there were so many different ways you could play the deck against other decks. There's so many different ways to win based on like the hand as well, if you had a hand for a certain game plan. And I felt comfortable enough that I could bring it to the competitive scene, and I have won a lot with it.
Mm-hmm.
A deck that I don't think you would expect to see at a competitive scene.
No, not at all. Honestly, no.
I don't even think like on the queue many people play Sleeper Agent. I've seen it on occasion, but I don't think it's very popular. And yeah, it's kind of sweet to pull up with some homemade sort of pet deck. Other people have had success with some off-cut sort of decks of their own creation. The Stick Fingers one is definitely gonna keep coming up just because it's very creative, and it's using a commander that is usually not very good for a combo, right? We haven't really seen that before. And there's also all sorts of different stuff going on there. But it's also like I want to try different decks out. I have the collection to be able to do that. So and a lot of that, like I got a love for deck building from the success I've had with the Johnny. So I get a lot of enjoyment from going, okay, well this deck worked. I'm gonna work on something new now. But I think specifically for this league, this season 4, I haven't spent enough time with the new decks I've tried to have any success with them. So the one time that I wasn't running an already established deck that I did have success with was a Niv Perun deck that I had. Like all my games were later into the week, and I was like, yes, I was playing with a deck that I sort of made in one night, but I was adjusting it as the week was going on, playing an improved version, and then also just by doing that, getting used to the archetype, getting used to how to play the deck optimally. And so even with the unrefined list, I had in better results than I would have had just with that practice.
All right, and next we want to talk about the metagame, the league stats, how some people are doing, what decks are winning, what decks have choked, or not really. Just kidding. That's kind of mean.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. It's not like anyone else here is choked.
It's
yeah.
fine.
Couldn't be me.
Yeah, who O3s? I totally O3s.
Yeah,
I got
definitely didn't happen twice for me. No. It doesn't. Nah. Choked? What?
Only cool
just
people
joking?
choke.
Only cool people? Oh, no, wait, hang on.
Alright.
Okay,
sorry.
well, for, in general, I mean, the Mudman's been keeping good track of top win rate decks. As for week to week, like, I mean, it's like variance is still big, right? Because these are still like best of 3. I've had a game where like I ran Niv against Chandra Tribal, and then I was like, "Hey, I'm sort of mad that I lost. Do you mind if I play like a couple more games, just because I just want to play more games?" And you know, and then we do that, and I'm like 4-1, and I'm like, sick. You know, it's like that's where variance shows. It's like, okay, I can go 4-1 afterwards to win like the theoretical like best of 9 or whatever and 5-3. But yeah, that's also an important point to mention. Like we do have statistics for top performing commanders. These also change like season to season because, of course, as seasons are going past, they take a stretch of time, right?
Right.
Like it's going to be 4 weeks plus tournament week plus week off. So that's like 2 months ish, or a month and a half because it's 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And in that like 2 seasons time, you're going to have a new set release, right? You're going to have new commanders to try, new cards to try, especially with one, like the set that's just come out. Right, heavy proliferation focus.
So much stuff to build around in one, and to add to decks.
So interesting.
Had so much stuff for the format. I think it's gonna be great.
And it's like for that set, like we have a lot of cards that are like great for my Johnny list, right? I already like I'm fiending for cards that say proliferate for that list, and so that's like getting a massive upgrade as well. But some other decks are like oil counter synergy? Proliferation? Like what? Like Teferi, what does Teferi get from this? Like the new set?
Teferi, in theory, gets one card that I don't think I'm going to play at all.
Yeah, so exactly, right? So sets can also change the metagame a lot. But I think a lot of consistent top performers at the moment that we can say for sure, Adeline's really good.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yes, that card. Oh.
Yeah, so you're saying like that was your check in week 2, where you're like, "Hey, I'm crushing this format's easy to ferry broken," and then you're like, "Wait, Adeline."
and then I got farmed. Yeah.
Farmed? Oh, multiple times as well?
No,
or
like just once. I got really lucky game 2 and took that game off because he just conceded honestly before the game was even decided, and we went to game 3 when he would have been on the play, and he absolutely destroyed me game 3.
Yep.
So.
And also, similar to Adeline, we've also got Rafine. Rafine previously, I think, was more of a reanimator deck.
Yeah.
Also, we had some figureheads in the community who really liked the reanimator plan for that deck.
Yeah.
And like it's very competent, but I think we're also finding that just this tempo version is like a build very similar to Adeline that's going to start snowballing on the attack step. Having a lot of success, and we've seen like Flashfan this season has just taken that.
He's taken Rafine to the moon this season. He's really put that deck and proved its worth.
Yeah, and same for Adeline. So we've had a player who's taken a whole week off, still top 8'd, right? With just overall, Adeline every week.
I have the stats up for everybody who has who is like kind of in the running for top 8, And Halbrick, despite missing a week, is at 8 wins out of 9 games played with an overall 80% win rate, which just goes to show one, Halbrick is a fantastic player. Don't want to undersell him there. And two, Adeline is disgusting.
Adeline, very good. And I know we also in previous seasons, Freya Liza, who's been tournament winner twice now, season 2, season 3. Congrats there. Also ran Adeline during week to week, and I think went 9-0 or something like that during a season. Just ran that 3 weeks in a row, and no one was like prepared to beat that deck apparently. Yeah, just very impressive statistics overall. We did have we had a Kinnan expert playing at one point, but they left. And since I've tried and failed with the deck, talking about definitely didn't choke any games. No, it didn't happen. Went 0-3. Yeah. Anyway, so that might have affected the statistics a little bit. But it's not completely like an untouched deck Kinnan anymore. Some other people are trying it out. But it's like variance affects the win rate. Like I'm a new player. I'm playing it, so that I'm probably not I am just not very good with the deck. Even though like I did actually test that one quite a lot. It's a complicated deck to play optimally, and you really like the aggressive mulligans. When the hardest decision in that deck is whether to mulligan a hand or not, and that takes so much experience. Which I didn't have with, I had 50 games played with it, and that was not sufficient experience to tell me, when I should mulligan or not. So, variance is definitely very big with these stats, but I would still say, this, in some way, is going to be a more accurate representative of, what the best sort of optimized decks are in Historic Brawl, because the queue will just give you it'll say if you run a deck that's really good in your queue and doesn't face against top decks, you might be sitting on 80% win rate and think, oh man, this has got to be the best deck in the format. But it's you bring that to a competitive scene where suddenly you're playing against every single type of different commander out there, and then it's a different experience completely, and a lot of these decks brought to this scene also have 70 plus win rate. We'll see that quite often, and so yeah, the standard's just completely different, just everywhere. But yes, unfortunately, it's not as strong an identifier as we would like it to be of strong decks, just because we only have so many games being played a week. Right. We only have 20-30 players at the moment. Some people just come in for a week and we're like, cool, and then they're like, no, I'm out. It's okay, fair enough, go try it. We'd love to have you in here, but
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're still not putting up the numbers for, especially a lot of decks that are tried once or twice that might deserve more of a testing, more of a go, just underrepresented. Represented. I can't speak. Underrepresented.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting how overrepresented certain decks are in the queue as compared to the metagame that we have here in the league. Because all the super greedy Kinnan and Golos and Goshintai and 5-color Niv and all those decks, from what I've seen, with the exception of, I guess, that one Kinnan player, get washed here in the league. You can't... If they run into Adeline, they lose. If they run into Teferi, they lose. If they run into Niv
Rusko now.
Or Rusko, they lose. Rusko's another interesting one, where Rusko, while he just got moved up to Hell Q and he's still kind of a menace over in there, he didn't put up I mean, there are good Resco pilots like Mob Boss, for example, has piloted him up too. He's almost top. I know it's your list that he's playing.
No,
Mob Boss is
I'm
playing.
also saying, hey, I'm a pilot. I
Yeah,
play the deck.
you played Resco very well, and Mob Boss is playing your list. And you have
Not
examples of
quite,
like
but yeah.
great players playing a commander that is pretty strong, who are doing well. But we've also seen multiple players drop Resco this season. I think there were like four
Oh
Rescos in
man,
week
week
one.
one or something.
There were like
Yeah,
three or
that
four
was like,
Rescos.
hey, Roscoe's broken, right? And then it's
Yeah,
like, well,
and then Resco ran into stuff like Adeline, and Resco ran into other decks that were kind of prepared for it because of how infamous Resco had become. So myself included, I was like, okay, I'm probably going to be up against Resco. Need to make sure that I can prepare to counter Rusco and deal with the Mana Rock and do all that stuff so I don't get just blown out of nowhere by it. And I think that's caused Rusco to honestly be not bad, but just not this powerhouse that it is in the queue. So
yeah. Well, we're still like it's early on since it got moved to Hell Q. I have so like especially with the new set, you want to try so many different decks at the start of a format where like for me like I haven't had a chance to really play much of Rusco and Hell Q. I played 3 games, won 3 games, all against Rusco mirrors. So like I haven't seen the Hell Q outside of Rusco yet. And it's like apparently people are still really liking to play that, especially on Q. But I mean, if the only thing you're getting is Roscoe mirrors, like
I
I mean,
played
it's kind of fair,
yeah.
right?
It keeps the win rate at 50%, but I played one Resco deck in Hellq so far, and it kind of wasn't close. I just kind of, you counter Resco, I destroy the midnight clock, and they conceded. So,
Yeah,
it didn't really last that long, but it seems like it's now that it actually has to fight against all the other blue decks that can keep Resco from entering and deal with the midnight clock, like it's definitely got some tough competition, but it's also not dealing with all the creature decks that had learned how to beat it down. So it might be able to fight against some of the greedier blue decks because it's faster than them. It's faster than like 5-color Niv and all those decks, and it might actually put up some pretty good win rates. So it might actually be better for Rusco win rate wise to be in Hell Q than it was in the queue right below it, where all the more aggressive decks were, which is pretty funny.
yeah. I wouldn't be too surprised, but it also might come down to how people have made the decks, because well, in testing, Roscoe can deal with aggro just fine, but if it's a blitz aggro that has a lot of haste threats, it really folds very quickly to
Yeah.
those. And it depends how people have made the decks, and if they haven't built their deck in the optimal way because they want to have fun, like it's a casual format at heart, right?
Yeah.
And they're going, hey, I want to play like this aggro list, but I want to play some like really fun top end cards in it that you might not see in like a tournament setting. Then you can still get washed in the quote unquote favorable matchup against Roscoe. So like it might not be the case there because of that, and then in Hell Q, everyone's sort of optimizing the decks more there anyway because they know they're at the top of the queue. They're just trying
Yeah.
to beat like the best decks already, and the only way to do that is to just make your deck better if you can. Whereas the other ones, you have the luxury of being a bit more greedy a bit more often. I could be completely wrong on that, but that's sort of my take on it.
I think
I
you're
don't
making
know
sense.
if I don't know if because I know you're playing Hellq a lot more often than I am. Is if like decks are being still very very greedy up there, or if
Oh
they're
yeah.
being a lot more
Oh,
streamlined.
it's only gotten worse. There's like a new Hellq deck is Kaya the Inexorable. I think that's Hellq. I play against that commander a lot. And it doesn't read like something that would be Hellq, but yeah, it's stuff like that. I really only play against like 5-color greed piles, and it's now Rusko and Kaya, and it's all very like mid-range, draw cards, play planeswalkers, draw more cards, play out a whole bunch of mana rocks, so I can cast more spells to draw more cards, and then here's I don't know, here's Ulamog, deal with it. It's,
Yeah.
that's my experience, at least. It's still very, very greedy, and has only gotten more greedy. It's either greed piles or control decks. That's all Hilliku is to me. That's all I ever see.
Shall we move back to the league, and we'll go over like how we've personally done in the league. I know you've had a bit of success this season, your first season in. So
it is my first season playing, and I really made it a goal to like I might not like try hard as much in next season or later seasons, because I really wanted to be like, oh my god, what if I top 8 the first time I try? That would be awesome. And I did. I think it's not technically official yet. But
it's more or less official.
I got to 8 wins. I hit the benchmark, and when looking at percentages of win rates and stuff like that, if I got lucky, right? So I had 2 games where my opponent dropped. Week 2, Arfrost just vanished, didn't play any of their opponents, and we all got a free 2-0. So that was lucky, I think I'm pretty sure I could have beat that deck. He was playing Falco Spara. So I wasn't.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't like super nervous. So I figured I could have beat him in that game anyways. And then this week I needed to 3-0 because I got absolutely washed on week 3, and I beat 2 opponents. One was I beat Mudman playing Rafine. And then there was another match that we'll get to later. And then I had to go up against Freyaleaser. The problem with that is that I really wanted to play Freyaleaser in the mirror. I normally hate Teferi mirrors with a passion, because it's really, really hard to play. I know people think it's, when they watch the gameplay, it's just people staring and staring and drawing cards and staring, and then there's a big counter war, and then somebody concedes. That's not how it. It's so much more to that. It's a lot of mind games. It's a lot of trying to leverage card advantage and trying to leverage, like getting your Narset and your really important pieces down that will help you win in the long game. Because everything in that mirror is about setting up for the long game. Anyways, getting off topic there. He decided. I guess he played Mudman or something, or he played So, Freyaleaser played... Who was it? Because he did play 1 game.
Yeah, he played against Niv
Okay.
from Andon, who's apparently a gamer.
Yeah. And he
lost that
game.
2-1.
And then he dropped all of the rest of his games. He was like, I'm not feeling in the competitive mindset. And I understand that. But this was a huge clout game for me, because this is the guy who played my deck, the deck that I based my Teferi deck off his Teferi deck. And he's won the past 2 tournaments, so I would have rather him beat me and I got DQ'd from the tournament, basically.
DQ'd?
Yeah,
or, you didn't make it.
I would rather not make it, because the matchup, that matchup experience and that kind of high level play would have been super valuable to me, and I hope I get to play him again next season. But I was really looking forward to it. So getting back on that was part of my 2. I basically got handed 2 free wins out of my 8. So as long as that's not factored in at all, which I don't think it will be this season, I think a 2-0 is still a 2-0.
Yep,
then
absolutely.
I'm solidly in. Did you find out who won between Mob Boss and...
Oh, no, they're still playing apparently.
Oh, jeez, it's been...
Well, they haven't started yet.
Okay.
It's been a while, but that's the last... Yeah, that's the... We're sort of sitting on one sort of important game for the top 8, and as we started recording, it's like, they're organising the game to be played just about now, so we are keeping an eye out for that.
There's still two players that can make it into top 8. I did the math based on win percentages and match wins. The top 8 right now, if nothing changes, is going to be Flash Fan 2 is going to be ahead because he's got 9 out of 12 wins with a 68.9% win rate. I put Halbrick right under him because even though he has an extremely high win rate, he only has 8 wins, so technically he has to be second.
It's just how it is.
It's just how it is. He would probably be first if he played that week. Full honesty.
Probably.
And then after that is Birthing Potter, then Jolto, then myself at 5th place, then Matmatator?
Mathematiger.
No,
So
that's
Oh,
the guy playing stick figures. I'm talking about the guy playing Azor.
Okay, yeah. Whoops.
Yeah, Matmatator playing Azor at 6th. Dracosinus at 7th. He's playing Kinnan this week, but I think he's swapped a couple times this week what decks he was playing. And then 8th place currently is Olaf the Moose. But if Mob Boss wins his match, he'll be in top 8. He currently has a 65.4% win rate, which would... Oh, I'm sorry. That would put him in 3rd overall. Birthing Potter at 3rd is 62.9, and then 62.5, then 62, then 60, then 60, then 57.1 is 8th place. So you need to beat a 57.1% win rate and have 8 wins to make it. And if Mob Boss and Mathematiger, who still have matches to play, if they both win, the top 8 will be different. Mob Boss will be in 3rd, and Mathematiger will be probably really close to 8th, because they only have a 56% win rate at the moment. So it would probably be... No, because they'd have to be above 60, so I guess it depends on how dominant their win is. I think even if they 2-0, I don't think they're going to break 60%. So I think Mathematiger might just be out, but I didn't actually run the math on the change if he wins, so it's fine. But my win rate is 62, so I'm pretty safe.
Yeah. Well, there's one game that we're missing out. And that's our game.
Before we talk about that, we do want to go over our matches from weeks 2, 3, mostly 3.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll let you go off on week 3 since you had a much better week 3 than I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, my week 2 was my best week, but week 3 was the 1 week. Well, I mean, as I said, like I've had new commanders each week. For week 3, I had Niv Mizzet because of the abundance of both Teferi and Rusko. Mm-hmm. I was working with Inkheart to try and build a deck that would beat those decks, and then not also completely fall to some of the aggro lists. And we thought Niv Mizzet with a bunch of the damage, spot removal, and the sweepers that he gets in red are good enough against the small aggressive creature decks that they don't need to just be destroy a creature or exile a creature. Dealing 5 damage to every creature is probably going to be enough. So that was why I went with Niv Mizzet.
Mm-hmm. Great choice.
Yeah, it worked out all right. I went 2 and 3. I can't remember all the matches I had. Apparently, okay, one was against. Oh, one was a drop, so I didn't even play all 3 games. Unfortunately, I had one game versus R-Select, who was on Feather the Redeemed. So that was an interesting game. But as long as you had answers for, if you can keep putting Feather and the other creatures in the graveyard or command zone, they're going to have a lot of dead cards in hand, being all the combat tricks and the protection spells.
Right.
And then as soon as you just set up with Niv Mizzet, you're in the driver's seat. and that's sort of what I experienced both games there, including one game where you have the one combo in the deck, which is Curiosity.
Yeah.
You deal a damage, you draw a card, deal a damage, draw a card, deal a damage, draw a
Nasty
card,
stuff.
and that's
Absolutely
that's
nasty.
that's infinite.
Yeah, I believe that game is up on, or that match is up on YouTube, correct?
Yeah, it should be. If you want to see that game,
Yeah.
you should be able to find it under season 4.
We'll link it in the description so that it's very easy to find. Super
Sure.
easy. Scroll down. It'll probably be in there if I remember to put it there, but I'll try.
It'll be there. I'll put it there if not. Okay. And the other game I had was against Jolto, who was trying to get their first 3-0 with a Chandra tribal list that they had made.
Nice.
Congrats to them because they managed it.
Nice.
And our games were also really close. I don't think they were favored in the match. But they had some really good draws with the Chandra like double loyalty activations, and then they were flipping like two planeswalkers off the sort of pseudo card draw they got off the +1 of Torch of Defiance, and they just like flipped two planeswalkers off the top, and they're just like, okay, I've set up with all my planeswalkers, and I'm like, well, I can't really respond to that because it's all resolved now. I also made some misplays in that game because I wasn't tilted, but I was really sugared up, and I was just playing quickly. So a lot of my decisions were like good for this turn and not good for the turn after this turn. So as soon as they had like a nut draw, I was like, I am out of answers.
Yep.
And that happened twice. So one game they had the nuts, but there was no way I had answers. And game 3 was really close. Went down to like turn 12 or something, and then they flipped the nuts off the top twice, and I've literally discarded my answer with Elude Effect previous turn because I got rid of River's Rebuke, and I'm like, I'm not gonna need River's Rebuke. They're just gonna play Chandra and like deal damage and stuff. So I'm like, I don't need this card. And then they flip 3 planeswalkers, and I'm like, oh man, if I had River's Rebuke, I could try and set up with Niv afterwards. And that was really tough. So they also seem to always have removal for Niv because they had the thing that, again, the doubles their loyalty abilities, and Chandra only deals 4 damage. But as soon as you double it, it goes to 8, and that's enough.
The incinerator,
it's
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember the name.
Chandra's like something or other. Gauntlet, gloves, incinerator, whatever it is. And then suddenly what doesn't deal with Niv deals with Niv, and it's just difficult once they have repeatable removal in a matchup they would normally not have repeatable removal for. And doing it in a way on a planeswalker where I'm not even getting a card from it, like usually it's going to be an instant or sorcery. That was just tough. But I mean, my opponent played the outs, got lucky in game 3, and I didn't play around it. So in one way of looking at it, I deserved that result, and ended 2-1 or 1-2 down in that match, and didn't get the 3-0 for that week. And they did. So.
My matches, I had a similar thing where I got washed. I got 0-3'd week 3. I played against, I played against Birthing Potter game match 1, which is really early into the week. I think that was like a Monday. I got up, I got ready, I queued up the game. I knew Uro was going to be a problematic matchup for Teferi because he kind of does what Teferi does, but better strictly against Teferi. He's better at doing what Teferi does. It's very, very hard to stop Uro. Uro draws tons of cards, puts way more lands into place. They have card advantage over you. They have mana advantage over you. They have a threat that is recurable, that they are constantly recurring, that you have to keep in check because it just runs away with the game. And I kind of figured I might lose this. It's not the end of the world if I lose this. And I did. I lost game one, and then I won game two because I was actually able to get Teferi to stick and tick up, and he wasn't
Oh,
able to
nice.
pressure it. And I was about to ult, and he conceded. I lost game three. Game three was really close, but I had a very very good start game three, like very good. I was super confident turn six,
Mm.
and I lost that game because I just kind of drew probably the worst 10 cards, not all lands, but there was a
Yeah,
period where I drew like 6 lands in a row, and I drew spells, but they weren't like
just not answers.
they weren't answers. They didn't do
Yeah,
anything. They didn't like even they didn't draw me more cards. It was just like some removal spells, the like counter spells that like counter this unless you pay X kind of things.
conditional. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
that they just didn't work in the spots where I had them. That was also a deck building problem. I promptly took some of those out afterwards, but
Okay,
so whatever. That game happened. I lost. I took at least one game, which will matter for the win rate. So whatever, cool. Then
put up a fighting.
I went up against Skull playing Yagma,
Yeah,
and I went in like I wasn't feeling well that day, but I was like, whatever. This matchup is very Teferi favored. It'll be
yep,
fine.
and it is.
And it is fine. I'm not gonna get 2-0'd or anything. I'm not gonna worry about it. He crushed me. They were two really intense games. Like they were close games, and he played super super well both games. Got under me. Got the stupid what's it called like Ghoulish Procession. So when I killed all of his stuff, he just got more zombies. So my board wipes were never that good. I drew farewell game one, but he just was able to redeploy his stuff right after because Yawgmoth had
Oh
already drawn him a
wow.
bunch of cards. So I was
Yeah.
like, well. So he gets under me both games, really, really close. Wasn't able to keep Teferi on board. Wasn't able to keep the cards coming. Wasn't able to keep the board clear. Blue, my biggest mistake is game two especially. I blew counter spells for nothing. I just threw
Right.
them out because I was trying to play fast because I wasn't, part of it because I wasn't feeling great. But I was genuinely making mistakes that even if I wasn't feeling great, I should have known better.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I've that's probably the worst game that I actually played all season was against him. I really underestimated the deck that I was up against, and I paid for it. I paid for it pretty bad. So, but I wasn't gonna make that mistake again. I then went up against Flash Fan, who the same day I played him later that day, so I still wasn't feeling well. But despite that, I still lost both games we played. I lost the match 0-2, but I didn't feel that bad about that one because I genuinely feel like I played a lot better even though I lost, right? Like I wasn't making the same mistakes.
Sure.
He just had the great curve, the aggression. He was able to snowball. He got his game plan going. I was able to stick it out and slow him down and do everything I could. And at the end, the matchup just kind of went, I think, how it's supposed to on paper or relative to
Yeah.
it. You know, I played much better that game, but he also played super, super well and drew super well, and, it happened. But I didn't feel bad about losing it, though. I felt like I at least played better.
Yeah. That's the one matchup where you go, hey, I mean, if I'm worse on paper and I lose the match, it's like you don't feel too bad about it.
Yeah.
It's just when the converse is true that you're like, now I don't feel so good.
Yeah. And then
But
moving on
you
to-
also have to. Well, I would just say you also have to bear in mind that variance is still a factor in these things. And if you play an extended match, that might not be the result that you get at the end of it. But that is the format, right? So.
And I was trying to be really, really nice to Skull afterwards because he genuinely played super, super well. He played super, super smart with his attacks and his sequencing and all that. So like, but I was really mad that I lost. Like I had to take like an hour to cool off because of how mad that I was that I lost that. But I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at me. So when we were talking about the game afterwards, I had to be like, yeah, good game. I could have played better, this and that. And in my head, I'm like, ah.
Yep.
Yeah, moving on to week 4 this week. You and I have already completed all of our matches.
Yep.
How were your games this week?
So like your week 3, not good.
Uh,
I also had favorable matchups. So losing those didn't feel very good. I don't really have much to comment on here. Like some of the games were pretty close. But I think the closest game was ours, and that's the only really one that I'm interested in talking about because
yeah.
the other ones are just
You were playing, for reference, you were playing
forgotten.
Chandra Dress to Kill, correct?
Yes, yep. The 3-mana Chandra, more aggressive than the 4-mana one.
Yeah.
It still has like some elements of the Planeswalker tribal, but it's so much more aggressive, and that's I think where I want to be if I'm playing mono red.
Yeah.
Um,
I, I,
that's why I picked it.
I do have one question. What persuaded you to play that over something like maybe a Johnny or trying Niv again?
Um, Matchups actually. So I knew my opponents pretty much for this week. I knew I was
Okay.
playing the Mudman, who was likely going to be on Rafine. I knew I was playing you, and I knew it was going to be Teferi. And I thought, I mean, if we're already discussing it, I don't want like some deck that gets rolled by Teferi. Um, and I also just want to play aggro that isn't in a flavor that we've been really seeing that much. Um, and mono red, like we always say, it's very capable, but not many people play it. And so I wanted to give it a go, really. Not that it went my way this week,
Yeah.
but yeah, I might have to go back, make some personal edits so that it plays how I want it to play and not how the creator wanted it to play. And then come back with a revised list and see how that goes. But yeah, and then of course you were on Teferi again,
Yep.
and
Always, baby.
you had the note that you need to probably 3-0 to make it as
Uh
well.
huh. I knew I needed a
So
3-0. So my strategy going into this week was like, okay, I'm not trying anything gimmicky. I'm not gonna try some weird tech. I'm not gonna try to prepare for a very specific matchup this week. That's kind of why I failed the week before. Is I was thinking in the wrong headspace when I was making changes to the deck about what I might face and what I need to be worried about and what cards are effective in those kind of games. I wasn't. I was expecting Rafine on week 3, and I kind of like overtuned just for Rafine. I didn't think about what else I would be playing. So this week, I didn't do that. I went to a back to basics, like almost what I would play in the queue, regular queue kind of deck, and that's all I did. So
right,
I took out some of the weird conditional counter spells. I added in cards like Declaration in Stone because I felt that it was really lacking on board removal. And if I didn't change that, that would have been the death of me. And those changes paid off really well. In the actual one of the games that I actually got to play against Rafine, having the correct board wipes and having a couple of extra, just 1 or 2 extra spot removal spells in place of what was there before paid off in dividends. Paid off super well. I played against Munvan's Rafine, so I had to play Rafine 2 weeks in a row, which made me nervous. He took game 1 off of me. And then I took game 2. Game 2 wasn't really close. He rolled me game 1. I kind of rolled him game 2. Game 3 was a very good set, I think. I believe that game's on YouTube. If you can watch his end. So if I'm wrong about that, you can check. I don't exactly remember how games 1 and 2 went, but I remember game 3 being a very intense game. But I came out on top. Had the right answers at the right time. The cards that I teched in the deck showed up, which was fantastic. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Freylaser dropped, so didn't get to play. But
there you go.
now we get to move on. We get to move on to Myriad.
Finally, wow!
We had to play.
We played.
Match. I was here. I am sitting at my desk. I'm 2-0 for the week, and my last opponent has already basically not has already lost their qualification for the tournament because we both needed a 3-0 to play to qualify, and he had already lost his. But now I'm like, oh no, is my co-host going to gatekeep me from playing in the tournament? That was, and I was like, I can't. There's no way I'm letting this guy. I was so determined to beat you. I don't think you have any idea how much I wanted to win that game.
Wow, it's a nail biter as well. So,
oh my gosh, do you remember game 1 at all?
It's so vague to me, but yeah, no, I genuinely, it's so out of my head. So you might have to do the heavy lifting on this one.
So yeah, game 1 is the one that I kind of remember the least. I really only remember game 3 because it was the most memorable game. But game 1, I almost stabilized. I remember you got some threats out. I wiped the board once or twice, but then you were able to land Chandra, and at that point I was like, well, you kept pinging me for damage, and then you had lethal on board, and I conceded, I believe. I'd have to go back to the footage. It's not posted yet. I haven't made the thumbnail, but I concede, go to next game, dead on board, no answers. Game 2, I actually think game 2 was a little bit interesting. Game 2 went a lot better than game 1 as far as me drawing answers to your creatures, and I think you might have flooded out a little bit.
I kept a bad hand, I remember. I kept a hand with Chandra, who can't be countered, and then I had the best 2-drop, which is Carry Zev, and I was like, well, the rest of the hand is literally dead cards, and but
I killed Carry Zev
I have in theory. Yeah, you kill Carry Zev immediately, and then you don't bother countering Chandra. You're just like, okay, I let the uptick happen once, and then Fateful Absence.
Yeah, yep, killed it immediately. Here's the funny thing, though. If I still had to be able to close out the game, and did I draw Dream Trawler that game? I don't remember.
I don't think so, but you or maybe. I think though you were on the road to just Teferi ult like really quick.
I think I might have either had it in hand or I had played it after ultimating or something. I think you conceded either after the Teferi ult or after I cast Dream Trawler. One of the two.
Something like that.
It was in that realm. I think I might have had Dream Trawler in hand, and I'm like, okay.
Maybe.
I know a lot of people are like, oh, 6-mana Chandra is very, very good against control. It is good against control. It's not good against control when they've already deployed their win condition and you only get 1 tick. I've beat Resolved 6-mana Chandra, like, many times. Like,
yeah.
It's an anti-control card that I think actually has, like, a negative win rate against control decks once it's resolved. Like, probably, like, 45% win rate. I won't say higher than that. At least to me, because I usually beat Resolved Chandra.
Okay, interesting. If they get like 3 ticks though, you're in trouble.
Actually, I won a game with 5 ticks on me, so you know. Best fairy player out there. Just saying. I'm just kidding. Then game 3. Game 3 was super nail biting. I was just sitting here like shaking up and down in my seat, like come on. It got to the point where you throw some creatures at me, I counter your commander, I wipe the board, you shoot me with like a couple burn spells, you deploy more threats, I deal with those threats, you try to get some planeswalkers down, I prevent that from happening, and then it got to the point where I'm at 2 life. I was at 2 life for like 4 turns. I almost thought, because I had to go second in this game, I'm like, okay, go second against Mono Red, like, oh, not fun, especially as, blue-white, bit slow, Mono Red very, very fast, Mono Red go burr, but barely clutched it. For some reason, I had a weird thing where I'm like, oh man, I think I might need another answer for something on board. I might cycle this neutralize to try to find it. Decided against it. Very glad I did, because that neutralize countered the shock that would have killed me.
Yeah. Definitely need all the answers you could get there.
And I think it was like before I was at 2 life too, so I wasn't even like dead. to a single burn spell yet. I just decided to keep it because I'm like, I know how this game is going to get closed out, so I need to keep this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did, and it worked out in my favor. Blue-white versus mono-red, the classic matchup. Once again, blue-white is triumphant. Blue-white, best archetype. Absolutely.
Scam. Scam. And this is where, like, I look at my deck and I'm like, man, because it wouldn't just be that game, it would be other games on, even in public queue, where I'd get them down to like 1, 2, 3, 4 life or something, and I'd top deck like creature removal. I'm like, this says deal damage to creatures and planeswalkers only, and I'd just get really frustrated by that. So I mean, definitely changes I'd make, but yeah, super close game. I mean, for me, like, there's no pressure for me to perform. I'm like, at this stage, I'm playing for fun and, you know, for the sake of, hey, we have a matchup. I'm gonna honor that I have a game to play and I'm not gonna drop just because I'm out. I'm gonna play all the games out. I went into like this whole season with the knowledge that I can't play in a top 8 anyway, simply because of time restraints and my time zone. It's never ever going to happen in a way that makes sense, that I can actually play in this thing. So, like, I didn't necessarily like go all in on I have to win this season. But I still picked what I thought were competitive decks, and you know, in the end, I sit around like 50% at the very end of the day, at the end of the season, and you know, the tried and true stuff worked, and the new stuff for me didn't. And that's the appeal to having pet decks is they tend to work, and they're pet decks for a reason.
All right, well, with that said, I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover today. We're at, I think, well over an hour at this point, so...
well over.
Been,
even after editing.
Yeah. This has been the second episode of the Arena Brawl Cast. The first one will be... I don't know when it will be available, because we have to make some changes to it. There's a watermark, and it's not quite as polished as it could be, but... I
think what we'll do is we'll still post that one first. Yeah. And then make sure just everything is a week afterwards. So
right, yeah. So
these might be delayed in terms of our perspective, but the time you're listening, it should be fairly chronological, I hope.
Yes. So anyways, thanks everybody for watching and listening. You could find a link to the server in the Discord. You could find a link to any matches that are available on the Brawl Hub YouTube channel are going to be... Those links are going to be in the description, the matches that we talked about, if they're available. And then let us know any feedback. Let us know if you want to hear us talk about certain subjects, certain topics, whatever. We're super open. We're learning this podcasting thing as we go, but we're having a lot of fun doing it. So, open ears. All right.
Cool. Thank you very much.
All right. You ready to get out of here, man?
Oh, yeah.
All right. We'll see y'all later.
Bye-bye.